So we're so busy fighting with ourselves over what rep duration we should be using, how many exercises is too many, single joints or multi-joint movements, single sets, drop sets, that we're kind of missing the bigger picture on all of this. We actually should be really uniting ourselves and kind of promoting what each other do and sharing the good practices that we have on social media.
Welcome to Corporate Warrior, the podcast that brings you the best advice on how to improve your health, optimize performance, and maximize productivity. With your host, Lawrence Neal.
This episode is brought to you by Health IQ, a life insurance company that helps health-conscious people like runners, cyclists, weightlifters, high-intensity training participants, and more get a lower rate on their life insurance. Go to healthiq.com/cwarrior to support the show and see if you qualify. If you take care of yourself, you do smart strength training, you eat well, and your life insurance company doesn't seem like they care, there's an answer for you. Health IQ actually gives savings to people who take care of themselves. About 56% of Health IQ customers save between 4 and 33% on their life insurance because of this. Health IQ customers can save up to a third because physically active people have a 56% lower risk of heart disease, 20% lower risk of cancer, and 58% lower risk of diabetes compared to people that are inactive. But your life insurance company probably just doesn't care. You care, and there are companies out there that care. To see if you qualify, get your free quote today at healthiq.com/cwarrior or mention the promo code CWarrior when you talk to a Health IQ agent. Hi guys, I am Lawrence Neal and welcome to another episode of Corporate Warrior, the podcast that teaches you how to optimize your health, exercise, business and lifestyle. My former guests include paleo pioneers Mark Sisson and Rob Wolf, zero carb carnivore Dr. Sean Baker, high intensity training experts like Dr. Doug McGuff and Drew Bay, successful serial entrepreneurs, time management experts, New York Times best-selling authors, extreme endurance adventure racers, sports scientists, and everything in between. Does the online bickering within high-intensity training bother you, like it bothers Dr. James Fisher and I? And would you like to hear some thoughts on how we think we can perhaps reunite the high-intensity training community and get us working more together so that we can push this positive message forward? Then you will love this episode. Dr. James Fisher is a course leader and senior lecturer in sports conditioning and fitness at the Southampton Solent University in the UK. He is the lead author on two of the most important papers published in resistance training, including evidence-based resistance training recommendations for muscular hypertrophy, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with. In this episode, we talk about the problems within the HIT community and how we can get along a little bit better, reconcile our differences, and work together for a common mission. Why high-intensity training can be a problematic label. It gets thrown around a lot and often misunderstood to the extent that it's kind of become a bit underdefined. James likes to use evidence-based resistance training, and I think I'm starting to go that way as well. I think the only reason I really used high-intensity training for such a long time is because that's what people identified my podcast with, and if they saw that I had high-intensity training in the titles to my episodes and on the blog, that they would then think, okay, that's about high-intensity strength training, but come to realize that that might not be that productive, so you may be seeing a change there in the future. And then we finish up on James's current workout routine, and I dig into this in a bit of detail. He talks about his volume and frequency. I worked out with James, both of the Jameses, James Fisher and James Steele, recently at the Southampton Solent University gym, and I was really, really impressed with both of their performances. They work out really, really hard. They're both in fantastic physical condition. James Fisher is just an absolute animal. He's a big guy with a lot of strength. Not to play down Mr. Steele, who is also equally impressive. But it was really fun working out with both guys. And we also talk a little bit about James's little life hacks, which I will leave as a surprise for you guys. And for all of the show notes and links for this episode and all episodes, please go to corporatewarrior.org. Don't forget to hang around at the end for your free gift from me. And now I give you Dr. James Fisher. James, welcome back to Corporate Warriors. Good to have you on for a part 4 on Corporate Warriors.
Thank you very much for having me, Lawrence. Part 4, is that really what it is?
Well, Skylar's, I think, on part 6, so, you know.
Oh, okay. So I've got a bit of catching up to do then.
That you do. So you reached out to me recently and said, let's do a new episode on kind of the problems that you see and experience in trying to unite the high intensity training community, which is something I think we've both kind of battled with. And, you know, it certainly upsets me sometimes a little bit to see some of the kind of battles going on within the high intensity training camp, and we should be working together. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the problems with the community as it is.
Yeah. So, well, first off, thank you for responding, for having me back on. And, you know, I think that you've got a great audience of listeners when I see the comments posted and see the people that you have on. I think this is a really great community to talk to and to reach out to. And then really there's two main approaches to this. The first of which is, high intensity training as an entity, as a whole, has kind of isolated itself from traditional exercise formats and from other training, and and people that promote high intensity training kind of almost go against those people. And also then within high intensity training, there's kind of infighting or bickering or whatever you want to call it about the kind of individual philosophies and the minutiae of it. And, you know, it was probably around the time of the new year, and it was probably pretty soon after I maybe spoke or commented to Ryan Hall even, that I started to think there's too much of this going on. There's too much kind of bickering and too much kind of infighting. Nobody has all the answers. Nobody really can stand up and say, you know what, I know more than everybody else. I'm that person, and so on and so forth. Nobody can do that. Not myself, not James Steele, not Skylar Tanner, not Brad Schoenfeld, not Stu Phillips, and nobody would profess to. And really, anybody that does profess to is probably having a good shot at things, but probably knows their own limitations. And so I wanted to kind of speak to you on a podcast about how we can kind of maybe bring this community back together a little bit and just be more self-aware that we're doing this even. You know, I will go first. When you did the discussion with the roundtable with Drew Bay and Ryan and Skylar, you know, I've been guilty of kind of I didn't ever mean to criticize Ryan, so hopefully he's going to hear this and will heed this. And if I did, then I apologize. But I was relatively critical of the approach of kind of individual training based on muscle fiber type. And that's my perception of a single journal article that I've read around the area. But at the end of the day, Ryan might be dead right on this. And if he's having great success with this, then it's not my place as an academic or as a scientist to criticize it when he's a practitioner in the field, in the trenches, doing the job. You know, really, I should sit back and look at this and say, well, hey, maybe we could work together on this.
But just on that, is it not? I think it's completely fair to criticize in a constructive way. So are we talking more about like the semantics in terms of the way you? Because I vaguely remember the post and I thought it was reasonably put across and critical, but in a productive way. So. Do you regret posting that, or?
No, I don't. No, I don't regret posting it. I regret maybe the approach that I took, and I think one of the big problems with all of this might be the medium that we're using. Yeah. You know, when you use social media and you use posts on a site, you know, you're abbreviating with terms, and you're probably be more succinct in the way that you type a message. So certainly I never mean any offense by that, but I think that some people within the high intensity training community are very dependent upon social media, and they are very in an effort to be succinct in their terminology on a post, they maybe come across as more opinionated than they actually are. Very true. Or they hide behind the fact that they're on social media and nobody can ever kind of debate this with them. I have a sit down and a face to face. and kind of talk things through. I remember back to at the Body Power Expo in the UK a few years back, Fred Hahn came over and I believe debated with Brad Schoenfeld. Fred might correct me on this, but I believe they debated repetition duration. And at the end of the day, they all went out for a beer and they posted some videos on social media saying, having a toast, and they were all kind of great friends about it. And they clearly disagree on certain elements of training, but they also, I think, would agree that they're probably arguing over the minutiae of training. We're all in an industry where we know the value of strength training. We know that it can, reduce chronological age. We know that it can, reduce biological age. We know that it can reduce onset of medical conditions.
That'd be amazing if it could reverse chronological age. So.
Absolutely right. Reduce risk of medical conditions, improve quality of life, longevity. We all know that. We all preach that, whether we're a practitioner, whether we're a scientist, and so forth. So really our goal should be to get people to do it. Not to get people to do it with a certain rep duration or using a certain number of exercises or a certain frequency. Those are the minutiae that come afterwards that probably the practitioners are going to know more about based on the individual person. Stu Phillips, I think, on your podcast said the best workout is a workout that people will do. Now, if that's high intensity training because people are pressed for time or people are fearful of what they do in the gym, so they want one-on-one coaching, or for whatever reason, then that's great. But actually, if they want to go and do multiple sets, and if they want to do power cleans, or if they want to go and do even CrossFit, and bear in mind, CrossFit is a sport, not an exercise modality, but if they want to go and do it, well, ultimately, there are absolute physiological benefits to it. So I think that we as a community can look at it and say, hey, it's not what I preach. It's not what I do. If I train you, I'm going to train you differently than maybe Luke Carlson or maybe Drew Bay or maybe Skylar or Blair or whoever else. But at the end of the day, I'm not going to go against what they say because they're clearly successful and then they clearly achieve great results for people. So I guess that's my kind of comment around all of that. That I don't withdraw my comments to Ryan, but I guess the undertone of my comments were, "Hey Ryan, I don't think that you've got this. I think that you're wrong on this." Actually, my comments are probably better expressed as, "Hey Ryan, I think you're doing a great job. You clearly run a successful business and have a great outputs and productivity with your clients. I'm not convinced by the muscle fiber type, training programs that you're using, but I would like to hear more about how you're using that with clients," kind of thing. Mm. So, and maybe science will completely prove Ryan right and me wrong with it.
It just takes I understand where you're coming from, because it takes a while. Like if you had to caveat every post with that type of preface, it would be very tedious. And that's what makes it so difficult to provide all of these kind of caveats every time we post something on social or on a blog. I like to film. I'm pretty thick-skinned in certain circumstances, and I've been hit with quite a lot of criticism, obviously, since I started the podcast, and I've certainly got better at taking it in the kind of written format. But it is so different when someone can sit across from you, like you did from dinner, sat across from dinner from me the other week, and you criticized me in a constructive way. That was a helpful way. But if you had wrote that to me, it would probably have been received completely different. And I think that's the problem. It's people perceive the written word very differently than they do when they're having a conversation. It's been numerous times where I've had an email or social media comment or something from someone that's really succinct, and I'm almost looking at it thinking that's a little rude. And when I talk to them, they're nice as pie.
Yeah, for sure. And like I said, sometimes it's either because of the way that they type the comment, or sometimes, like I said, some people definitely hide behind social media as a format of having a front of being, maybe more aggressive, or maybe, being more elitist in their opinions. And then when they sit down face to face, they don't project the same opinion. So I think that, and I just think I guess the big thing for the high intensity training community is a lot of people still kind of jump on the back of Ken Hutchins or jump on the back of Arthur Jones or anybody else beyond that. People now jump on the back of Drew Bay, and they're absolutely right to. Drew's an incredibly intelligent guy, and he's an academic and he reads around the area or has read around the area extensively, and we've had communication about different papers and different research studies and so forth. But I guess from my perspective, there's some people maybe take an approach that they don't need to learn anymore. They've got this exercise thing. I know that I've got that down. I know what people should and shouldn't be doing. And if they're not doing it my way, they're not doing it right. And I just think that we need to be a little bit more open-minded than that. I think that we need to be a little bit more, I don't know, just open to different people's approaches. I'm not a super slow guy, but where does super slow begin and end? Because I did a workout yesterday, and for some reps, for some exercises, I did a 3-1-5 rep duration because I like that rep duration for that movement. For some, I did a 2-4, and then at the end of it, I do a 60-60 pull up. So, does that make me a super slow partial, or does that make me a hit guy? Or I never use the term hit. I use the term evidence-based training. But I just think that, is there a right or wrong in this? Can we really say that? And not just for rep duration, but for some of the other components as well. So,
yeah, I prefer evidence-based training too, and I battle with this a little bit because I have a brand, I have a podcast, and I'm recognized as having content within high intensity training. So if I start saying evidence-based training, I don't think I'm going to draw the people that are actually into, high intensity strength training into that necessarily. And I'm going to get lost in all of the other health and fitness content. However, when having a conversation with someone, I'm dropping high intensity training completely. If people say, what do you do for exercise? I say, strength training or resistance training, and that doesn't really create any kind of ambiguity then,
Well, yeah, I think you're right, and I really enjoyed hearing Drew's podcast, and I really enjoyed hearing his perceptions on exercise. And I sent you a message after saying that I disagree, and I'm quite happy to state that now, for the record, and be clear about it. And that's purely by the role of, I'm an exercise physiologist. I don't think that we can say swimming and cycling and running are modes of transportation. They're not types of exercise. I think that's maybe going a bit too far. But I certainly get the approach that he's taken, and I certainly know that he's entitled to that opinion. But if we take what high intensity training is, and Drew eventually kind of said this is what exercise is. It's high intensity training. Well, for me, and probably for the more global community, rather than the kind of, for want of a better term, the splinter group of Drew's specific philosophy or super slow, whatever we call that, high intensity training is probably low volume, high effort. And that's any way you pitch it. So is that relative? Brad Schoenfeld would say, well, that's relative to other training types, right? Low volume could be training 3 times a week, not 5 times a week. Well, some hit guys will train 3 times a week. Some hit guys will use split routines and train 4 times a week. Mike Mensa, you can't say Mike Mensa wasn't hit, but he was using split routines and following other protocols and so forth. So I don't know that we can be as absolute blanket as saying, if it's not XYZ rep duration, number of exercises, so forth, it's not hit anymore. I think hit by its definition, high intensity training is lower volume than most people preach, low volume, high effort, probably a single set protocol, and so forth.
This makes me think that so often the arguments online are down to just misunderstanding of what the other person's trying to say.
I'm sure that's absolutely right, Rob.
Because I think a lot, when you actually, quite often, if you ever see two people actually talk, having had that kind of online discourse, or if that online discourse then evolves, you'll see that actually they both agree with each other. But quite often, they're just not speaking the same language, and it's just semantics. I think almost all of it is semantics.
You know what? I think you're dead right. And I think, I mean, I'm more than happy to kind of do this because there are people online that I've had these kind of discussions with. And David Landau is another one. And we've had kind of back and forth over different things. And at one point we kind of got into different politics arguments. And that's, of course, the worst conversation to have. But the reality is, David's. I don't know if it's David or Dave. So if you're listening, I guess you can correct me. But he's clearly a really intelligent guy when it comes to training, and he's got some really great ideas and opinions and so forth. And then we probably agree on 99% of things, and then there's probably a 1% that we've kind of butted heads against. And a couple of people a couple of years back said to me, "Oh, you and Dave Landau have really fallen out," and I was like, I don't know the guy. How have I fallen out with him? I don't know him to be able to dislike him or to be able to fall out with him. In the same way, I don't really know Drew Bay or people like that. We have these conversations over, one facet of our lives, albeit that it's a huge part of our lives because, exercise tends to dominate. But in reality, like you said, we probably agree on more than we disagree, and we're probably just speaking a slightly different language on those other things.
Yeah. Yeah, go on.
Well, I was going to say, and I guess the big thing is, for me, one of the reasons, I was at a conference 5-6 years back now, and I heard a strength coach from Florida speaking, and he's a HIIT guy, he's a high intensity training guy, and I spoke to him after his presentation, and I said to him, how do you manage to still take this philosophy with your athletes? And he said, "Oh, well, I've got an understanding, like, coach, the football coach or the basketball coach kind of understand this approach, and they're with me on it." And I said, "Right." And he said, "But trust me, when they're gone, I'm gone. I don't have a job anymore." And I said, "Really?" And he said, "Yeah, we lost. Like, let's be clear, we lost the war. Like, high intensity training lost the war." And I keep reflecting on that, and I keep thinking, boy, that a big part of us losing the war, for want of a better term, has got to be down to the fact that, if you go back to, the art of war, the art of war is divide and conquer, right? So we're so busy fighting with ourselves over what rep duration we should be using, how many exercises is too many, single joint or multi-joint movements, single sets, drop sets, advanced techniques, are they necessary? What frequency of training should we be using? We're kind of missing the bigger picture on all of this. We actually should be really uniting ourselves and kind of promoting what each other do and sharing the good practices that we have on social media, and building up this community to take over the world.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, I'm always a bit of an idealist and a bit of an optimist, and I like being that way. I actually see a kind of, like, obviously, like, people often use the analogy of, like, anything that's like a big idea, changing something, it's like turning a huge ship. It takes a long time. But if you look at the kind of the sum of all of the influences in health and fitness, or certainly, well, then again, I could be living in a bit of a bubble because I look at only certain influences. But I think I've got a fairly good view on this. And I think that if you look at the sum of their thoughts, the science they're sharing, and I'm talking about people like Menno Henselman, Brad Schoenfeld, you and Dr. Steele, Dr. Doug McGuff, and in some of like Brad's colleagues and like Stuart Phillips, if I look at all of those guys and I look at all of the messages, the scientific literature, the views, the viewpoints, everyone acknowledges that resistance training is really, really beneficial for health. And obviously the benefits are vast. And actually, in my opinion, if you look at a lot of, and you'll probably agree with me on this, if you look at a lot of the data and the recommendations that are coming out, it's all very similar, like it's very individualized. Some people do better with higher frequency. Some people do better with less. It would seem that overall volume is less than perhaps the old school bodybuilder days where Arnie was a big name. It just seems to me that it's all coming together, like it's all heading in the right direction. So I'm not bothered that we're going to maybe forget about high intensity training. I know there's obviously romantic history with all of that, and obviously that's lovely to hold on to that. But in terms of like how to influence exercise and how exercise is going to evolve to help the masses and inform those interested in it. I think it's all going in the right direction. I don't care if we call it HIIT, evidence-based resistance training, fill in the blank,
Yeah, and you know what, Lawrence? I think you're absolutely right. The only caveat to all of that I would say is I think that there are still a limited number of people who take up exercise because of the perception of what it is, of how complicated it has to be and how much they have to do. And I think if I walked up and down the office corridor, here at the university, and I knocked on people's doors, even down this department, which is dominantly exercise and sports sciences or health and fitness programs of some kind or sports coaching, most people would probably say, yeah, you need to be in the gym an hour to 2 hours, probably most days per week. And boy, we know, like, there are HIIT guys who say, hey, if you're in the gym for more than 20 minutes at a time, and that's more than twice a week, that's too much. So we know that there's a minimum dose. So we know that you can get really positive adaptations from probably 2 or 3 exercises, once a week as a starting point, and maybe build it up from there. But at a minimum, that would do it. And I'll tell you what, if everybody on the planet right now from this day started doing a leg press, a seated row, and a chest press to a high degree of effort, I'm not even going to say to a muscular failure, but to a high degree of effort for a single set once per week, we'd be in a much better place. Added to which, if they don't do a single set, they're not going to take up loads of time on the machine for everybody who has to wait for their set to get in. So I definitely think we're moving in the right direction. Like you said, it takes time to steer the ship, but I think that we can, as a community, promote what this is as a time-saving and time-efficient approach to training. Mm. And that's the thing that we should be, maybe what we should be doing is focusing more on the things that we agree on than the things we disagree on. So, I mean, just continuing on a little bit, Roger Schwab's just set up his X-Force studio in Philadelphia, and it looks absolutely fantastic. But, a few podcasts back, Drew commented on X-Force. And I think that, Drew's clearly entitled to those opinions, and he's obviously, maybe he knows something I don't about X-Force, but I've used X-Force. I quite like it. Bill DeSimone described it best when he said to me, the thing about X-Force is there's nowhere to hide. You get to the eccentric phase, and suddenly you realize that on the eccentric phase, you probably tend to take it a little bit easier because you can. And when you get an X-Force and the load increases, you got nowhere to hide. The reality of it is one-on-one personal training. The personal trainer is taking responsibility for these things. The personal trainers will taking responsibility for coaching the exercise, for coaching the movement, for coaching the relaxed neck, the relaxed hands. Drew got into some awesome details. I feel like this is like the Drew Bay show. I'm talking about Drew a lot here. It's because I just got done listening to his podcast yesterday. But he talked about some awesome details about having a relaxed neck and relaxed hands and so on and so forth. But that's the responsibility of the trainer to deal with that. And to pick up on those details. And some trainers aren't there yet, or some philosophies might not focus on that as much. You watched me train, within the last few weeks, and you probably saw that I am not too focused on my neck. I'm not too focused on staying relaxed. If I've got a trainer there, if Drew stood in front of me saying, hey, relax your neck, I'm going to relax my neck. I'm going to appreciate the input and the coaching. But when I'm training myself, or myself and James Steele are working together, or any other guys that aren't too focused on that, I think that this is the kind of minutiae we don't need to get too bogged down with. And I think that Roger and X-Force and people like that are doing some amazing things. Roger ran Mainline Fitness for a long time, and a hugely successful guy. And we should be looking at what I mean. Geez, I would probably never criticize Roger for 2 reasons. One, he might be the single nicest guy I've ever met. And 2, he's clearly incredibly successful as a businessman. I'm stood here in an office as an academic, and I don't think I'm ever going to make the kind of living that he made running that kind of business, influencing that many people's lives. So we should be looking at people like that and saying, what can we learn? And we should all be doing that. I'm going to if we're going to get onto the Resistance Exercise Conference.
Yeah, let's do that.
I'm sure we will do. I sent a comment to Luke yesterday about the lineup he's got there. So Ted Dreisinger, Dr. Ted Dreisinger, Mike Gittleson, strength coach, Dr. Michelle Seeger, Rob Morton from McMaster, PhD student of Stu Phillips. And I sent Luke a message, and I was saying I've just finished reading Michelle's book, and I've connected with Rob, and I'm excited to meet these guys and learn. And it rolled off the tongue and learn. I want to hear what Rob's up to. I want to hear what he knows that I don't know. What can I get from that? I want to hear Michelle's approach from a psychological strategy to get people to exercise. I want to hear Mike Gittleson's approach over how he works with athletes and how he implements or why he implements certain protocols and how he implements them and how he works with the other coaching staff. And Ted Dreisinger is, a legend of the spine exercise industry, of back pain industry. So, he's absolutely got some incredible things to learn about.
Absolutely.
But we should all be looking at a conference like that and saying, what can we learn? Not, hey, I'm not speaking, therefore I'm not going, or, hey, there's nobody there I can learn from because I'm a XYZ guy and I only follow XYZ people. That's not my Bible of exercise. So I just, I know there are some people that are going to listen to this and they're going to think, well, this is a load of BS. But I just want people to be a little bit more open-minded over the different philosophies and what they can learn from other people.
Yeah. And I'll take this opportunity just to promote the conference. As you know, they are a sponsor of Corporate Warrior. And I was going to actually publish this episode near or after the conference, but I suppose now it probably makes sense to do it way in advance. So if you're listening to this and you're interested in the conference, obviously James is speaking alongside the speakers he just mentioned. I will be there. It's a fair few Corporate Warrior listeners in attendance. It's going to be a great couple days. So if you go to resistanceexerciseconference.com, you can get 10% off with discount code Corporate Warrior 10. So quick plug and moving on.
You know what, Lawrence? I laugh about it every year because it sounds like I work for Luke or Discover Strength, and I really don't. And I know a lot of people say, "Oh, well, he's a Discover Strength guy." I'm really not. I think they do. Luke will tell you that I've messaged him and I phone him and speak with him, and I probably give him as many criticisms as I do compliments. I've turned around and said, hey, I love what that trainer did, and I've turned around and said, hey, I don't like that part of your exercise menu, and so on and so forth. And Luke's a really great guy over that. He'll take the criticism and want to learn and want to keep moving forward with it. But this is an unbelievable conference. Genuinely, if you're interested in strength training or your business is strength training, you really can't afford not to be there. There are too many people that I know that don't go to this conference every year, and I look at it and I'm like, man, you're missing out. You're not just missing out on the academic element from the different people or the practical element from the trainers that are there, but you're missing out on the collegiality. It's you're the downtime of when you're grabbing a coffee with people and asking what they do. I go over there and connect with Tasso and connect with Bert and connect with Diane and connect with Patty Durrell and Dwayne Wimmer and people like that. And these guys are, are fantastic people even just to hang around with, and they're doing amazing things. So it's, there's a really great element to it. So, and I'm not plugging the conference. I'm not trying, I don't get anything.
James.
if you go, I don't get anything for it. But I definitely think it's something you should think about.
You get a bigger audience, so don't you? So.
Well, I get a bigger audience, yeah, but I don't get paid by the audience, by the attendee.
No, I'm as the listeners will know, I'm, been looking forward to going to this, and I've wanted to go for a few years, and it's just never been possible because this podcast is always a side hustle to my main career in the UK, and obviously now that's all changed. So I'm very excited to come along. I feel very fortunate that that's just part of the territory now, and obviously can't wait to see you again and all the guys. And we've got a little Facebook group, but chat going on with Skylar and Owen and Blair. Which is quite entertaining. Always talking about barbecues and beers and things like that. So
barbecues, beers, beards, and early morning workouts.
That's it. Yeah.
So it'd be great. And you're going to go to Chicago first, right, and catch a Bulls game?
Well, yeah, that's right. Actually, yeah, I need to book that. I need to do that quickly before the prices spike. But yeah, that's the plan. We're in. Ash and I are kind of having like half holiday, half business. So, like the first kind of 5 days will be in Chicago. So yeah, I'm hoping. I think the only game on at that time is Bulls versus Boston Celtics. Right. So yeah, I need to get on that because I don't want to get, seats in the nosebleeds. I want to get, fairly decent seats, but that's going to cost me. So I need to get on that. So thanks for reminding me.
No worries, man.
James, before we wrap up, I'm really interested to hear, actually, I think we've got a fair amount of time. So, do you want to I just want to kind of summarize this piece. What advice do you have for, high intensity training practitioners and those, I guess, outside the community who maybe, don't collaborate or make enough time to listen to the guys in HIIT community? How can we collaborate better and be a bit more productive?
Yeah, I mean, that's the big question, isn't it? Really, what can we do? I guess the key thing is reach out in private. I don't want to get rid of like the public forums. I think that there are some great public conversations going on. It's how I've met people like Mike Petrella and people like that. And I think that there's great public discussions. But I guess if you've got what you feel is a criticism, it might be better voiced as a question in private rather than in public. And in doing that, we kind of approach. We take the approach of saying, hey, I don't know the answer. I'm asking you why you do it your way.
And now it's time for a quick break. This episode is brought to you by Health IQ, a life insurance company that helps health-conscious people like runners, cyclists, weightlifters, high-intensity training participants, and more get a lower rate on their life insurance. Go to healthiq.com/cwarrior to support the show and see if you qualify. If you take care of yourself, you do smart strength training, you eat well, and your life insurance company doesn't seem like they care, there's an answer for you. Health IQ actually gives savings to people who take care of themselves. About 56% of Health IQ customers save between 4 and 33% on their life insurance because of this. To see if you qualify, get your free quote today at healthiq.com/cwarrior or mention a promo code CWarrior when you talk to a Health IQ agent. And now back to the show.
I have a philosophy with my wife, which is the less said wrong. And I think sometimes we can kind of take an approach with people where we say, hey, why? Just tell me why. Why do you do that? And then they can give more detail on their philosophy or their approach or their own perceptions of why. Because, we end up being these different kind of splinter groups. If we look at, I always kind of jokingly compare high intensity training to like a religion. And I say there's all these like little splinter groups that have kind of come away from it and gone, oh, well, I've interpreted the Arthur Jones Nautilus Bulletin Bible in this way, and I've interpreted it that way, and and so on and so forth. Or, well, you've got to remember he changed his mind on this, or Ken Hutchins came in and said that. And people have kind of taken these little splinter elements away. And actually I think that we can kind of look at it and say, well, actually, maybe I missed something. What did I miss? Why do you do it that way? I do it differently. So tell me why you do it that way. I was really interested to hear Doug Holland's podcast where he talked about his training protocol. Now, a lot of people would listen to that and say, that's not HIIT. He in some cases he did multiple sets. In some cases he did sets not to failure that were kind of warm up approaches. But actually, Doug sounds like a great guy, right?
Hilarious.
And if you've seen the video of him doing a deadlift and then opening the beer afterwards, this guy is, he's tremendous. And but I think that we should look at that and say, hey, he's got this novel approach. He makes a business out of it. He achieves what he wants to achieve, does it from it. He clearly is very committed to it and enjoys it. He's been successful as a power lifter, and he has a lot to offer. And we should look at that and say, hey, Doug, let me learn more from you. Let me learn more about what you do. Not because I want to do it, not because I disagree with it or I want to argue with you, but I just want to hear more about what you do.
Yeah, he was much more open-minded than I assumed he would be, actually. I thought he was going to be quite quite like stuck to the kind of high intensity training principles, and obviously he was much more open-minded than that. And it was quite unexpected in a nice kind of way. So
Yeah, absolutely. And I think most people probably are, because they realize the importance of individual variety and things like that. So, Yeah.
Okay, so we've got roughly just over 10 minutes or so, and I just wanted to cover your current workout, James. What is your, I mean, I had the pleasure, just to let the listeners know, I had the pleasure recently of being trained by both James Steele and James Fisher. It was one of the most horrible experiences of my life. And I almost puked after a couple drop sets on a barbell curl, and had to be put on a bike for about 10 minutes to just calm down and then resume the workout. But it was really, really, interesting and useful for me to see how you train, because you're quite right. If someone like Drew Bay or I guess a more kind of purist high intensity trainer were to observe, they would probably be pretty pissed off because of the amount of grunting and grimacing and things like that, although the form was obviously really good. But certainly you do sort of train in your own way. And I found that very kind of inspiring and motivating. But yeah, just very, very keen to hear about your current workout routine.
Yeah, well, first off, that workout, just for clarity, we did a drop set on a knee extension, and then we went to a drop set on the barbell curl, the Med-X knee extension, then we did a barbell curl. And to be fair, Luke, it's not a surprise you don't feel well, because you work incredibly hard. And you're probably not familiar with doing isolated movements in that manner. I know that you tend to do a lot of bodyweight stuff. So, the variety of it, the I'm a day, whatever else there may have been. I'm not trying to make excuses.
No, it's funny you bring this up though, because I wanted to say, oh, I'm not used to this. And there's a whole skill aspect to these exercises. I haven't done a barbell curl in like 2 years, but I don't need to tell you that, because one, like, who cares? And two, you get it.
Yeah, and I think this is it, and this is what I love about being trained by people. I would love to go over and you've got a who's who. If you look back over your podcast, you've got a who's who of who I want to get trained by or who I've trained with. Bill and Doug and people like that. It's fantastic, and Drew and people that I would love to get trained by, that I know that I would learn from, and that I would do something different from what I normally do. So when you came and we selected, James and I spoke the day before, and he said, "What do you want to do?" And I said, "I want to destroy him." I'll be open about it. I said, I want to crush him. And I said, to me, one of the most sickening things you can do is absolutely brutal. We did 5 drops. We did 5 drops on a barbell curl, and then went to chins, or negative only chins. So it's that's unnecessarily brutal, but that was part of the point, because I know that you do bodyweight exercises, and I know that you do compound movements, so I know that like you said, you haven't done that for X years. So I wanted to do something you haven't done. I wanted to do something different. When I go and work out at Discover Strength, when I go over for the Resistance Exercise Conference, they're going to use machines that I'm not familiar with. I'm going to do protocols that I'm not familiar with. They're going to turn around and say, hey, for this, let's do 30-30. Hey, for this, we're going to do drop. Hey, for this, I want you to do negative only, whatever it might be. So they're going to throw in different protocols than I'm used to. And I think that variety is really important. So you asked about, getting to the question, you asked about my workout. So I trained yesterday. So I'm probably doing 2 full body workouts per week right now. And I say probably because depending on timing, one of them might get split to an upper lower. So that might become 3 workouts, 1 full body and then an upper and then a lower. The full body workout I did yesterday, I can talk you right through it. So I did a prone leg curl. I'm really enjoying doing unilateral training right now, or as the Americans call it, isolateral. So I alternate left leg, right leg for reps, and when I reach fatigue on the unilateral movement, I go to negative accentuated. So I still lift the weight. I then lift the weight with both legs and lower it with one. And then when I fatigue with that, I then go to just traditional reps. So it ends up being a prolonged set, but it kind of acts as a bit of a drop set. You kind of do a single leg at a time, and then a single leg negative at a time, and then just a traditional exercise. So I did that for leg curl. I went to knee extension. I did the same thing for knee extension. They're both on Life Fitness pieces. From there, So 2 lower body. From there, I went to 2 upper body. I went to overhead press. I did a drop set on overhead press. And then I went to pull-ups. So I went to just traditional pull-ups. I did probably about a 3-1-5 rep duration for most of those exercises. I went to pull-ups, and there was a couple of guys using the pull-up bar, and I managed to jump in on a set. So just to kind of sort of piss them off a bit, I did about a 5 or 6 concentric, 5 or 6 eccentric, and I probably went for about a minute to maybe a minute 20, minute 10, minute 20. Ground out some good reps, and when I got to it, kind of held a tough concentric for about another 10 seconds. So, it's the point where I couldn't complete the repetition. I just carried on kind of pulling against it and then holding the position and then slowly lowered it. So 2 lower, 2 upper, I went back to 2 lower because I was training at that facility at that time. They've got hip abduction and hip adduction. So I did probably about a 4-second concentric, 4-second eccentric, with a pause at the maximally contracted position for hip adduction and then hip abduction. And I just did a straight set of about 8 to 10 reps. I didn't make a note of it. I know a lot of people are going to hate that I didn't write it down. From there, I went back to upper. So I did a chest press drop set. About a 2-4 rep duration this time. And then I did a seated row at about a 4-4 rep duration. And again, that was just a traditional seated row. So that was my 2, start 2 lower, go 2 upper, 2 lower, 2 more upper. So I've done 8. I went to leg press. And I did a drop set on a 45-degree plate-loaded leg press, and then following that, I did a drop set on using the same machine. I did a calf press, so I did 2 more lower, and then I went back and did pec fly and rear delt fly as 2 more upper. And I kind of like that I can kind of really destroy my quads and hamstrings in the first 2 exercises, then go to upper body and let my lower body kind of recover. And so forth. The whole workout was done in about 30 minutes, maybe 35 minutes, bearing in mind the leg press was plate loaded. So, I occasionally throw in an extra workout where I do other things. So now and then when I'm training at the university here, I use the MedX lumbar extension, and I use our MedX cervical 4-way neck. Yeah. So, for example, the last workout I did here, I just did MedX lumbar extension and just did flexion and extension of the neck. And I tend to do that on any other kind of random day that I get time to do it here. But yeah, my full body workouts look something like that. That
lumbar extension machine is awesome. Like, James put me through that James Steele, I should caveat, put me through that at the end of the workout, and it was way more challenging than the Keiser version, which I think is similar model but slightly less sophisticated. Didn't have the fancy screen and some other bits. And yeah, I was so fatigued that I really I had additional motivation because I didn't want to let James down. I wanted to make sure I got to proper, true failure and inroaded some. But it was so hard and so tough to do. But I just wanted to say, for those listening, like, I've worked out with these guys and they are incredibly impressive, not only to look at, but in terms of their form. And they're both kind of opposite ends of the spectrum not, it's probably not quite that clear cut, but James Steele is obviously much slimmer than you, but equally impressive physique. Like you were saying, he's got incredibly thin skin and his vascularity is insane. And he's ripped and so strong and muscular, but he's not like massive. Whereas you're kind of much more kind of mesomorphic. You've got a lot more bulk to your musculature. And so, yeah, I wanted you to kind of talk through your workout because I think that you guys kind of show what can be attainable, I think, from a physical point of view, if people are really determined. Obviously, genetics play a huge part, but I found that quite inspiring, and I thought it was pretty cool. So.
Yeah, I definitely think genetics play a huge role. And at the end of the day, I know that a lot of people say, well, it's very difficult to reach your genetic potential. I would probably disagree with that. I'd be interested as to why they think that. I think that you probably, with the right training, can reach genetic potential, in 6 to 12 months of training. And I'm at a point where I'm pretty plateaued. There's not much changes in my workouts, and I know that, which is why I like to throw in the variety of doing different techniques or different exercises, training at different locations and using different machines. James is naturally a lot leaner person than me. I'm naturally a bit broader shouldered, probably an inch or so taller, a little bit thicker around the midsection. And I say thicker, yeah, I probably carry a lot more body fat than James. But I think I carry it quite well. But James is naturally leaner. Bear in mind, Dr. James Steele is 10 years younger than me. So,
that's a good point.
So I think I'm doing quite well. I by the very rough estimates that you get, my biological age is 24, wow. And I turned 40 this year. So I'll take that.
That's so. Nuts. I can't believe that. I didn't know. I mean, when I saw you both last, it's quite funny because I sort of stood there during the kind of first, 20 minutes. I said, you guys look really well. Like, what's going on? Have you both been on holiday or something? Like, you look really tanned. And then you were like, yeah, we've both been hitting the sunbed.
Yeah. We do. We have. It's really funny, Lawrence, because I said to you, one of the things I said to you over the dinner that we had was, I'm really interested in hearing people's little life hacks. I think it's the little details. I think, maybe we could learn something from that. James and I probably maybe once a fortnight, maybe once every 3 weeks, we go and we get what we call a 4-minute holiday. We go and get a sunbed for 4 minutes, not together. We go in separate sunbed.
That's not what you told me.
and that's our way of kind of resetting the body clock a little bit. It's kind of our way of, you could ask me what the benefits of it are, and I would say, well, the UV rays and kind of resetting the body clock, getting that UV at that time of day so that your body knows that that's day and not night and so forth. And because we live in England and we don't get enough daylight hours anyway and things like that, you know what? Standing still for 4 minutes and just letting the world go by and knowing that you're not a part of it is great. So, I think there's a lot of benefits to it. James and I go for coffee probably a couple times a week, and we probably get in a few thousand steps in doing that. We probably talk research a lot. And that's our way of kind of switching off from everything going on in the university and doing that. So,
sounds very meditative. Yeah. What's the, before we wrap up, what is the protocol for the sunbedding? That you would recommend as your life hack to the listeners?
My protocol. Go and check out what sunbeds, check out what lamps they use, so you got your different UVs, UVA, UVB light and things like that. And then, I tend to just get a course of maybe 60 minutes and then just go get a 4-minute sunbed, probably, like I said, once a fortnight, maybe once every 3 weeks. And to be honest, Lawrence, I'm really fortunate. I've got reasonably, darker skin. I've got darker skin than James anyway. I tan pretty well and things like that. So, from that perspective, I like it. I like to do it. It's kind of fallen into our routine of what we do. So, I know that there are some people out there who are probably going to laugh or whatever, and I'm okay with that. You guys can do your own thing. I think I enjoy it.
I was telling Ash about it, my partner, and she's like, "You're an idiot." And I was like, no, these guys do it, and I'm going to totally check and see if they've got one in Galway and hook it up. And she just ridiculed me. I think she's kind of just taken the mic. She kind of agrees underneath it all, but I think she was very surprised that I would tell her that I would consider something like that. I hadn't really thought about it, to be honest.
Yeah, I think partners are like the best critics in office. My wife thinks that I'm an idiot over most of this stuff. She can't believe that I'm making a living out of, when she talks about my PhD, she says, you basically did a PhD in bicep curls. Let's be fair. You did a PhD in resistance training. How do you get a PhD in this? I think to some people this can be really easy to ridicule, and to other people, it's little life hacks that you want to look at. I've got a few little life hacks. I take an omega-3 every morning. I take, certainly in the winter, I take a vitamin D tablet most evenings. If I haven't gone on the sunbed, I probably take it 4 out of 7 evenings. I do. I'm pretty big on intermittent fasting, but it tends to work quite well for me because I don't like breakfast. I know that I don't like the food type. If somebody wants to cook me bacon and eggs 3 times a day or every other hour, I'm going to eat it. I love it. But to be honest, when I get up in the morning, the last thing I want to do is eat, and I've got so much to get on with that I just kind of get going. So it's probably around midday that I stop and think about anything. But you were there for the meal that we had. I can put away food.
Oh my God.
Pretty well. And I love that. I love being able to eat. And I think that's part of the reason why I train the way I train. I've found kind of a nice balance with what I do, with how much I eat, with what I choose to eat, and the training that I do.
I've never seen someone put away that much meat in one sitting. I mean, meat has that real satiating effect where at some point you just can't consume anymore, and you just consume like so much. I couldn't believe.
You became part of the crowd in that sitting, Lawrence. Let's see, Luke Carlson came over and we did that. Simon Shawcross came to visit and we did a workout, and then we went to Casa Brazil. When Luke came back with Brandon Yonker, he did the same thing. And I'm sure there have been other people that we've done that with, but that's kind of the Wednesday protocol now. There's a big workout and then we go for a big meal and we sit and just enjoy it and kick back. So you're one of the in crowd with all that.
I feel very honoured, and I'm hoping, as per our kind of like pre-episode chat, that I can come and do it again at some point with you guys, because I just got so much out of the day. The training, the conversation afterwards, it's just so fulfilling. I don't know. Hopefully you guys felt the same way.
I definitely think we did. We spoke afterwards and we really enjoyed having you over. You're more than welcome anytime, Lawrence. You know that.
Appreciate it.
And I would say the same to other people in this community. If you're interested in what we do and you run a facility, or you're interested in the science and the research, get hold of me via email. I'm always interested to reach out. I've done some work in the past with Pat and Stephen McKinnon, who run a facility up in Newbury called Abstract Bodyworks, where they use MedX equipment with a super slow cam fitted, and they follow a super slow protocol. I've reached out, as you know, to Matt Nairn in Brighton.
Have you been there yet, to Matt's place?
No, I emailed him today, and I've tried to set a date as the 21st of Feb.
Excellent.
to go down there. And there's multiple people that I want to kind of reach out to. There's a guy, John Allen, who runs a GP referral center, or he works part of a GP referral center in Dudley.
Familiar with John.
Yeah, so there's a lot of people in this community that I want to meet, I want to speak to, I want to see what they do, I want to see if there's anything we can do for them, if there's anything they can do for us. I think that we don't make enough of this community as a whole, and I know that we've. I've been up to see Dave Blakemore and used his pieces up there, and James up in Hinckley as well, and these guys are awesome. It's great to go up and do a workout at their place and go for lunch and hang out. And like you said, you get a lot from just being around people in this community and talking about what they do. And I think we can all be a bit more open to that. So
sure. James, what's the best way for people to find out more about you?
Find out more about me? I have no idea. I don't, somebody said to me, why don't I run a blog like Brad? You asked me, why don't I run a blog like Brad Scharfeld and people like that? And I'm not trying to market myself as a trainer. I don't run a business in that format. I'm an academic. My wages are paid by Solent University here. So I don't run anything like that. Connect with me on Facebook or send me an email, james.fisher@solent.ac.uk. I know Stu Phillips said don't email him, and like him, I get just a ton of emails, but I'm pretty ruthless. So the ones I don't like, I delete. So honestly, and that's not to say that you need to put something epic in the title or start out with something amazing that makes me want to read it. I read them. I just don't respond to kind of predatory journal emails or conferences that are asking me to go and present at a gynecology conference in Dubai or something like that. Pretend if I am. So yeah, just send me an email, james.fisher@solent.ac.uk. Or find me on Facebook. If you're in this community, then there's bound to be mutual connections, so you'll see me there.
Yeah, for sure. And they probably already know of, obviously, I would say, 80-90% of people listening to this probably know of you already, and
20% of them like me.
Oh yeah, I was going to get into that. No, but that's good. That's good stuff. So I'll link that all up in the show notes. And for the show notes and all the resources that all the people, places, things that James and I mentioned in this episode, please go to corporatewarrior.co/Fisher. I shall use Fisher because James might get a bit confusing. And for a list of all episodes, go to corporatewarrior.org. And until next time, guys, thank you very much for listening. I hope you enjoyed that episode. Before you head off, head on over to corpwarrior.com, that's CORP warrior.com, to get your free high-intensity training Google Progress chart, an ebook with 6 interview transcripts of some of my top guests, including Dr. Doug McGuff, Drew Bay, and Bill Simone, on how to optimize muscle gain, fat loss, and overall health in an efficient, effective, and sustainable way. These transcripts are deliberately not verbatim. Instead, they've been transcribed in an easy read format to make it more enjoyable and easier for you to quickly pick out what you need and start getting results. To get your ebook, head on over to corpwarrior.com, enter your email address, then check your email for an email from me with a confirmation link. Once you click the link, you will be instantly redirected to a PDF version of the transcripts.